This video is introducing our brand new Mazda 3 Hatchback turbo all-wheel drive long-term car. And when I say long-term, we're going to drive the hell out of it for 6 months and put as many miles as possible on it. Now, the hatchback market is kind of disappeared. There are very few traditional hatchbacks, at least in North America. They've all gone to like this liftback thing. They've taken sedans or four-door cars and just made a hatch on the back. They've lost some of the traditional shape. They've also grown in size. So when you look at cars like the GTI and the Mazda 3 compared to like the Civic and the Integra, the Civic and Integra look huge compared. So we wanted to really drive a car, in my approximation and Jack's perception, was one of the best new, like somewhat affordable, like daily drivers that could allow you to have a little bit of fun. It had great styling and design, and their approach in terms of attention to detail was pretty much unrivaled in this segment when it came out. And I feel like in some ways it's a car that's been slightly forgotten about, and I know there's been supply chain issues. It's hard to get these out in the wild like they probably would like to, but you always hear other cars being talked about. From the new Integra, the Civic, the Elantra, the GTI, the Golf R, the WRX, those always dominate the conversation. And while Mazda is trying to separate itself out of that by going more upscale, and the price reflects that, our tester is like $36,000, which is an insane amount of money for a Mazda 3 when you think about it. But we want to find out, are those changes really justifiable in terms of a car that you can buy, keep, and really be happy with it? So we're going to look at consumable costs. We're going to look at drivability issues and anything that goes wrong with the car in the 6 months. We're going to see how it performs in the heat and, of course, in the winter and the difference there. We're going to test different fuel from 87 octane to 91 or 93 in our area because there is a power difference when you run regular fuel versus premium in this car. And we kind of want to talk about the pros and the cons of the engineering. If you watched our original Mazda 3 videos, you'll know they're insanely long. We try to touch on every single thing that they did because they really did spend a lot of time on it. But here's a crash course. They put most of their money on the interior space. And some of this exterior styling is also something we don't see in this price point, with the kind of the flowing lines on the side, that kind of fastback look without being a fastback. They've removed more glass in the car. They made it look more sleek, although still being a hatchback. And they're still trying to give you the practicality and all that. Underneath is where some of the cost cutting went into place. It's a torsion beam rear end. You still have strut. There is more NVH material, but it's trying to stick more to the affordable nature of an economical car while trying to raise up other elements of making it more premium on the inside. So it's an interesting car, and we're going to be comparing it, and that video might already be out when you're watching this, but we have a comparison with the Mazda 3 Hatch Turbo versus the Integra. And those are two cars trying to do the same thing, but come out with two different results. So we're going to take the Mazda 3 for a drive, kind of an introductory drive, reacquaint people with it, kind of the good and the bad of it, and then we're just going to follow up with additional videos over the course of this, and we'll put it in a playlist so you can watch every video in that regard. So let's get out on the road.
Mark, we're about to set off in our long-term Mazda 3 Turbo Hatchback. Put this baby into Sport Manuel mode. This is Mazda's not-so-hot hatchback, and this was a vehicle we were somewhat lukewarm on in our original review, and then got criticism for not putting it in our affordable, sporty, compact comparison where we had the Elantra and the Civic Si, the WRX. How does this car feel now, a year and change later, and now that I've spent a lot of time with it, but you've driven it a couple of times now as well? How does it feel, at least initially?
It's amazing in the regard of how they tuned the power band that is like feels fast all the time at the low end. Like your launch is really, really powerful with the all-wheel drive and all that torque concentrated.
And with how dense the air is. Right?
Yeah, I mean, we're in the best case scenario for power, so you're never going to want for more of that. The all-wheel drive system, if you choose for that, it's going to transform this car in terms of usability. Like, it never has issues with traction, namely on winter tires, and it feels very, very refined to drive. And I will stand with our decision not to include it in that like fun performance car, this is not trying to be that. I hate to say it because Mazda's always been known for their hatchbacks to be more engaging to drive. What they did here is they neutralized and naturalized all the inputs. Everything feels a little bit softer, smoother, more cohesive, but it is not edgy. It is not a great handling car. It's more about refinement.
Yeah, so I've put, at this point, a couple thousand miles on this car, and as we've talked about in the beginning of the video, the goal is to put as many miles on this thing as possible. Drive it everywhere, try to accelerate the wear as quickly as possible, and I will tell you, already, this car only has a couple thousand miles on it. There are quite a few buzzes, squeaks, and rattles, but despite that, the car does still feel pretty refined, even with these Blizzak snow tires, which obviously help in our sub-zero freezing weather and snow and ice and all that stuff. You do constantly hear that whir of tires.
Yeah, you have the tread pattern, the tread block noise, which is, people are used to that with some certain all seasons in this thing. So that, even with that said, it's still a quiet, refined driving experience. You do notice it in the back that you do feel
the torsion beam.
The torsion beam. I mean, you can't get around it, and I think it is a big step backwards as much as they say that it's not. Maybe most people in the front, you don't really notice it, but it definitely doesn't feel as like sharp as its competitors that are trying to be more fun cars.
The other thing I will notice, and we talked about it in our original video, the steering in this thing is really slow. It's really slow. You have to use a lot of the wheel to get it to turn in. It's not particularly, I don't want to call it inorganic, but it's not all that direct. It does take more steering input than you're probably used to in most modern front-wheel drive cars. And I think that's a plus or a minus, because you've come up in all the cars that you've driven with very fast steering racks, like to the point of being unnatural. Like we joke around about the BMW racks where it's like a joke. You turn it like a quarter inch and the thing's like darting all over the place. I feel like they made a conscious effort to make this thing drive more natural, and even though that the steering rack might not be as quick as some of the competitors, I don't find it to affect the comfort level daily driving, and namely on the highway, because they're not using... It doesn't wander.
Yeah, it doesn't wander. It doesn't have a variable rack, so that doesn't mean it speeds up. All the inputs are really cohesive for this car, right? Yes. Not one thing stands out as being, oh, this is too direct, or the steering is slow, and this is not. The gearbox matches the steering, matches the brakes, matches the throttle input on this.
So with that in mind, and this is sort of the intro to our long-term series on this car, what do you hope to accomplish? We have an MDX Type S long-termer. The other long-term press car we had was the Toyota Venza.
Yeah.
What do you want to accomplish with this, you think?
I think it's to kind of see what it's like to live with, and what are the things that, upon initial impressions, that wow you, that may not wow you after you get done driving it for 20,000 miles. The things that really grate on your nerves in terms of, like, NVH, is there things rattling, that drives me crazy. Does making a quieter car actually not make it quiet because you can hear everything? Fuel economy, running cost, that's what I'm concerned about here.
Yeah, so Mark, I think in this series it's going to be our goal, and with that, I hope to see you when we hit the 10,000 mile mark, the first sort of, like, I view it as year-ish for a regular person. All right, let's hear some turbo.
Oh, let's hear some fake engine noise. Well, there you have it, a short drive and kind of a crash course on what the Mazda 3 is and isn't. We're going to follow up on certain mileage milestones like 15,000 and 30,000 miles and give you the update in the heat of the summer versus how it performed in the dead of winter. Also, check out our Mazda 3 versus Integra video. If it's not already out, you'll see that. And then if you want future updates, of course, the easiest way to do it, you hear it a million times, is subscribe, and you will get updates and keep in touch with what we're trying to accomplish here. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next video.